committee members, call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 82 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is meeting on a study of the Canada Summer Jobs Wage Subsidy Program. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to standing orders. Members are attending in person and remotely using Zoom. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the participants. Several will be attending virtually. All committee members are in the room. Please use your raised hand icon to get my attention, or raise your hand if you're in the room. You have the option of choosing to speak in the official language of your choice. If there is an interruption in interpretation services, please get my attention. We'll suspend while they're corrected. I would ask members and those witnesses to speak clearly and slowly for the benefit of the interpreters. And to committee members, please be careful of your microphones, your headsets around the mic, as well as cell phones for the benefit and protection of the translators. Now, we are delayed. We were delayed starting, but we have two panels. One witness is not appearing in the second one. So it would be my intention, if the committee wishes, is to do both panels and simply use a 6-minute round in each panel. Everybody would get the same. Ms. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by that?
Well, we have 1 hour.
Oh, only that? Okay, so we're not going past?
Well, this is the wishes of the committee. We can't.
Okay.
We do have resources. So what is the wishes of the committee?
I personally have a hard stop at 6:30.
Okay, just so we got Madame Shabat.
Your suggestion, well, considering that there are some witnesses that are here in person, so that we're able to hear all the witnesses, I do agree with your suggestion.
And thank you, Madame Shabat. I do. We will have the ability to hear from all the witnesses, as well as each party in the committee will have their 6-minute questioning round, if that's the consensus of the committee, and it will push us beyond the 6:30 mark a bit as well.
Chair, is there a process you can put in place? I've seen it done before, where after 6:30 we just restrict voting.
That's the wish of the committee. If the committee zooms, I seem to.
No, after, like, I need to leave at 6:30. Like, that's I have something scheduled that I need to be at. So just as a courtesy, I was hoping that maybe if we had an agreement that, we listen to the witnesses with the agreement that after 6:30 we would suspend any possible voting.
The committee can always choose after 6:30 to operate under the rules of a reduced quorum if the committee wishes to go a bit further. Madame Shabat? Madame Shabat? No, I want to hear.
No, sorry. Sorry.
Okay, so we're not going to delay. We'll play it. Oh, Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if we have all of the witnesses except for one, and we're doing them in 1 hour, then there's very little time to ask anyone questions, and I don't think that that's fair to anyone, both to the members here at this table. And the reason why we're late is because the Speaker of the House making a lengthy statement today. So it was because of what was going on in the House. So I don't think that that's fair to these witnesses that are, that we should be able to ask questions. So why don't we schedule another meeting so that we can have the full hour with just this shorter group of witnesses? Because even if we have all the witnesses at the same time, we're not, there's not as much time to ask them questions, which isn't fair to the members or fair to them either.
I agree, Ms. Gray, I've called the meeting to order. We will begin with the first panel group that will be presenting their opening statements. There's only two, so that's 10 minutes. So we will have a round of 6-minute round, and then the committee can always give me direction at that time.
For clarification, will we go to what time? Have we decided that?
We do have resources to. We could go to 7:30 at the latest.
Is that the will of the committee to do that? I would just like to know as a courtesy so that I can make some arrangements.
Well, okay, as chair, I will make a decision. We have resources go to 7:30, so we will proceed now with the opening round for the first panel. If members got to make some decisions, then we'll deal with it then.
So we don't know. So just for clarity again, are we going till 7:30?
Do I hear an objection of going to 7:30?
Well, I would make a motion then that we finish at 6:30. If no one's suggesting 7:30 except one member.
Madame Chabat?
Je comprends la proposition de monsieur.
I understand Mr. Coteau's proposition, but I think that we can perhaps replace a member that needs to leave, and we can have the committee until 7:30. If we're starting now, we'll almost have the entire 2 hours. Witnesses have already been are prepared to testify, and so there are people present. So for me, it's very clear that in the case of a colleague, of a committee, regardless of the party, we do have the opportunity to get replaced. And so I hope that is what might happen.
Thank you, Madame Chabat. And yes, I will take direction from you that we will, the meeting is underway now, and the meeting will conclude, unless somebody calls an earlier adjournment hour, it will conclude at 7:30. So we'll go through the regular scheduling. So in the first panel, appearing is the Cooperative Education and Work Integrated Learning Canada, Matthew Rempel, President by video conference. We have Lulabo Nursery and Child Care Center, Connie Luang, who is not making a statement by video conference. And we have Statistics Canada, Vincent Dale, Director General, Labour Market Education, Social Economic Wellbeing Statistics by video conference, and Andre Bernard, Assistant Director, Centre for Labour Market Information by video conference. So all the witnesses in the first panel will be by video conference. I will call on Matthew Rempel to make your opening statement, 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Hello, bonjour. My name is Matt Rempel, President of CWIL Canada. Je m'appelle Matt Rempel, President de CAT Canada. I'm joining you from Oakville, Ontario, which is located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the treaty holders, for being stewards of this traditional territory. I'm so honored to be here today on behalf of Cooperative Education and Work Integrated Learning to discuss the Canada Summer Job Wage Subsidy Program. CWIL is a national association, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we are dedicated to advancing work integrated learning in Canada. Our comments and recommendations are presented to you from our experience as an organization with over 1,800 members that collectively facilitate hundreds of thousands of post-secondary work integrated learning experiences per year. Work integrated learning is where a student completes work-based experiences as part of their educational program, such as co-ops, internships, placements, and this ensures that Canada's youth have the skills our labor market and society need. We'd also like to share our appreciation of the government's commitment to funding youth programs, wage subsidies, and work integrated learning. Our country's ability to supply a skilled workforce of tomorrow is a necessity in the global race for talent and enables Canada to stay competitive in the innovative and emerging industries of tomorrow. That's why a balanced distribution of resources across these programs are vital for our youth, our students, and our economy. And inspiring employers and industry to simultaneously invest in youth creates a return on investment that is invaluable in achieving our collective goals. In the review of the Canada Summer Job Wage Program, CWIL would like to recommend a few opportunities for your consideration that may improve access to quality work experiences needed to fully unpin the capacity of Canada's youth. Recommendation 1, consider leveraging the Canada Summer Job Wage Subsidy Program to support the government's work integrated learning goals. There may be ways to improve the impact of the Canada Summer Wage Program on the government's other goal to expand access to work integrated learning. Whether it's a summer job or a formalized work integrated learning experience, the program eligibility could be updated to achieve the goals of both. For example, student work integrated learning may be full-time employment for a semester or more, which is longer than the typical funding in the summer jobs program, or even part-time, such as 2 days a week, which is also ineligible. These restrictions do impact employers' ability to select top talent and access this program. Recommendation 2, the potential for aligning funding confirmations with the timelines of student job search. Post-secondary students specifically often begin their job search process several months before the funding confirmations are provided to employers in April. This is especially true of students who are taking part in work integrated learning. By announcing funding earlier, employers who rely on the Canada Summer Job funding will be able to access more students and enable a better fit for their needs. Recommendation number 3, evolve the Canada Summer Job Program to be offered year-round. The traditional post-secondary education model of studying in the fall and winter semesters and then working in the summer is changing. Academic institutions and programs have rotating intakes, which leave students available for employment all 3 semesters a year. The Canada Summer Job Program could evolve to be available year-round. This would also support industry who have need for youth employment beyond the summer months. Employers are ready for this, as most already take on students 3 semesters a year through co-op and work integrated learning placements. And our last recommendation would be to ensure quality work and learning experiences for students. In our experience, we know that quality of work experience truly matters. And at CWIL, with over 50 years of history, we've developed a depth of expertise on how to structure high value, high quality, and high impact learning and work experiences for youth. Work experiences need clear learning and development objectives, structured and quality supervision, and we need to remove barriers to access for equity-deserving groups. CWIL collaborates with thousands of private, public, and not-for-profit employers, and we have significant experience and demonstrated success in supporting industry employers provide quality work experiences. We would welcome any opportunity to work with the government throughout the program review process to offer our expertise on ensuring high-value work experiences for our youth. To the members of this committee, I would like to thank you for the invitation to share our thoughts and appreciate your consideration of our comments. And I would welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you. Merci.
Mr. Rempel, now Mr. Dale with Statistics Canada, Director General. Mr. Dale, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, for inviting us today to provide a brief overview of recent developments in Canada's labour market. Labour market conditions in Canada remain tight by historical standards, but have eased in recent months. Employment has grown by approximately 30,000 per month on average between January and September of this year, but that growth needs to be interpreted in the context of record high population growth. The employment rate, or the proportion of the population aged 15 and older who are employed, was 62.0% in September, little changed from 1 year earlier, but down 0.5 percentage points from the beginning of the year in January of 2023. After reaching a near record low of 5.0% at the end of 2022, Canada's unemployment rate has increased slightly and now sits at 5.5%. While recruitment remains a challenge for many businesses, the number of job vacancies in Canada has decreased by close to 30% since the summer of 2022. Positions requiring a high school diploma or less continue to represent the majority, just under 60% of total job vacancies. I'll now turn to a discussion of labor market conditions more specifically for youth and students. Each year from May to August, the Labor Force Survey collects labor market information on youth aged 15 to 24 who report that they were attending school full-time in the spring and who intend to return to school full-time in the fall. For the remainder of my remarks, I'll be referring to this group as returning students. On average, from May to August 2023, just over half, 53.0% of returning students aged 15 to 24 were employed. The employment rate for this group was similar to the rate recorded before the pandemic, but down slightly from the recent peak recorded in the summer of 2022, when for both youth and older workers alike, labor market conditions were particularly tight. Small businesses are an important source of summer student employment. In the summer of 2023, over 4 in 10 returning students worked for a small business, compared to 1 in 3 employed persons overall. Although young returning students can work in a wide variety of industries and do work in a wide variety of industries, about half of them work in either retail trade or accommodation and food services. This pattern has been consistent over time. Proportionally, more young female returning students worked in healthcare and social assistance in 2023 than young men, while more young men than women worked in manufacturing. Over the summer of 2023, returning students earned $17.84 per hour on average. This was up 4.3% from the same period a year earlier, which was comparable to the growth in average hourly wages for employees as a whole. Despite a relatively tight labor market, there remains untapped labor supply across many segments of Canada's increasingly diverse population, including among students. For example, among returning students in the summer of 2023, those who were part of a racialized group were generally less likely to have a job. The employment rates for South Asian, Black, and Chinese Canadian students were all lower than the average returning student population. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening statement, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. We will now begin the first round of questioning with Ms. Gray for 6 minutes, please. Ms. Gray, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. My first questions are with the representatives here today from Statistics Canada. How long have you been tracking youth employment statistics? How far back does it go where you were able to compare?
I can tell you that we've been tracking it for at least a decade. I would have to go back and find out exactly when we started, but we do have a relatively long time series.
Great, thank you. What statistics do you specifically keep track of with regards to the Canada Summer Jobs Program?
So we don't collect information on for those students who do report being employed. We don't have any information, in fact, on whether or not that job was part of the Canada Summer Jobs Program. We're not able to make that link directly through the Labor Force Survey.
Okay, so this is a study on Canada Summer Jobs. So it's interesting to hear that you don't track anything regarding Canada Summer Jobs. So you don't track, how many people might have been employed because of the Canada Summer Jobs Program, or who might continue being employed because of the Canada Summer Jobs Program. There's absolutely nothing that's being tracked from within the Canada Summer Jobs Program?
So I would make a couple of observations. The first is that the information that we do collect, including the Labor Force Survey, provides valuable context for I would say, for your study and for understanding student employment as a general issue. So very, very valuable as contextual information. I will mention, I didn't go into this in my opening statement, but at Statistics Canada, we do have the capacity to integrate data from across different sources. So if, for example, we wanted to engage in a more detailed research study and look at the profile of those who participated in the Canada Summer Jobs Program. That is something that we could do, but we have not done that to this point.
Actually, one of the questions that I had was actually leading into what data might be crossed over with other programs. So, based on what you just said, do you have any data at all on, for example, how many people might apply for various programs? We know that there's a number of different job youth programs that the government has, and so do you collect any data on where students or where youth might be applying? You know, someone might apply for through several different streams or different programs, and they might be accepted by one. Is that any kind of data that you would collect at all?
So I could speak to, in general terms, how we would approach a research study of the type that I described. So where we would want to look at the profile of applicants or people who had been employed through the program, we would typically do that in partnership with, for example, ESDC. They would provide us with information on applications and registrations. We would then link that, for example, to census information or tax information and build up a portrait of those students. As I said, we haven't done that to date. And to repeat, that's the type of thing that we would generally do in partnership with a department like ESDC.
Okay, so we don't really have any data at all, is what you're saying at this point, that could look at how successful the program might be, whether it's for reemployment or students staying on with organizations. It's just really interesting that information isn't being captured. But I did want to ask you, one of the comments that you had made in your opening statement was about returning students, and I think that the age that you gave was 15 to 24, I think was the age group that you gave. And I was wondering if you look at returning students that maybe wouldn't be within that age group, because we know that there's a lot of returning students that a lot of more mature students that are going back to school. And so when you're looking at students, are you only looking at, this youth age, or are you looking also having statistics on returning students that might be of different age groups as well?
Yeah. So for the group that are referred to, returning students, those who were students in the spring and intended to return in the fall, yes, that's only for 15 to 24-year-olds. That's a current limitation of the survey. We do have additional information, for example, in those who are currently registered as students. We would have that for all age groups.
Okay, thank you. Would those be classified strictly as within that age group, or would they also be classified? Do you have a subclassification to see who's returning?
No, we can only do that subclassification for 15 to 24-year-olds, not for other age groups.
Okay. Is there one other quick question here? Do you have what information do you think would be useful to track regarding the Canada Summer Jobs Program if you were to start tracking some information?
Yeah. So maybe I can clarify. I can speak to the data held currently by Statistics Canada, and I can say that we don't hold information related to the Canada Summer Jobs Program. In addition, I can say that it's not Statistics Canada's role to evaluate the effectiveness of programs. That's a question that would be appropriate for ESDC to answer.
Mr. Van Bynen for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a great opportunity for us to seek firsthand knowledge in terms of following up on our mandate to improve on the program, or what the intent of this committee is. The past summer, I did visit with a number of organizations that were running programs with Canada Summer Jobs. In many cases, the young adults that were delivering those programs were returning students. And if I recall correctly from some of the statistics that we received in a previous presentation, in 2022, almost 50% of the students continued on with permanent employment following Canada Summer Jobs. But I think that's information that we can get from the earlier testimony. So from my perspective, I'm more interested in the logistics and what happens on the ground in terms of how well we serve the employer applicants and the student applicants. And I appreciate the many challenges that CSJ creates for applicant planning, budgeting, interviewing, and then onboarding the students. If you take a look at the timelines, and what I heard back from our constituents is the frustration that the employers had with respect to the deadlines and then onboarding individuals. And it was interesting to hear that that was a concern as well from Mr. Rempel. So if you could just explain in a little more detail what type of challenges that you're facing in terms of the logistics of the program, in terms of the effectiveness of the program, and if you have some recommendations on how we could improve the application process, the approval process, the timelines, and the onboarding. And then I'd like to come back to you with an additional question with respect to the flexibility that you would like to see inside the programs as well. So, Mr. Rempel, over to you.
Thank you very much for the question. I think that the point that I would share, having seen the recruitment cycles of post-secondary students by employers, is that they are doing it earlier and earlier than history has shown us. So if you're an employer and you are requiring funding support in order to hire a youth or a student, you need to know as early as possible that you're eligible for the funding to be able to engage in a competitive recruitment process. Many students are securing summer work or their co-ops or their work integrated learning as early as sort of January, February, and some employers are actually looking to push it further back to get ahead of their recruitment cycles. Now, it's not to say that that's the lived experience of every employer, but there are many that are recruiting that early. And if we want to make sure that the funding of the program enables the employers that are eligible for it to recruit and seek top talent in a competitive way earlier, if they're informed earlier that they're eligible for the funding, that would make a big help.
Up as well on the flexibility that you were talking about. You mentioned earlier that you'd like to see year-round, you'd like to see full-time and or part-time eligibility. Can you expand on that and give us some examples of how that might work better, both for the benefit of the program and for the benefit of the student?
Certainly. Thank you for the question. Students in post-secondary these days really are experiencing non-traditional fall, winter, and then you're off in the summer break to work life. Many institutions have academic semesters that start in January, continue into the summer, and then students might have a break in the fall or might have their break semester in the winter semester. So recognizing that our youth and the youth that employers are attracted to very well could be available 3 semesters a year, the recommendation would be to explore if that meets the needs of employers and industry. And if so, the students are available and seeking work, and the program could be evolved to be a rolling intake of 3 semesters long, the time frame when employers are looking for students and when students are looking for jobs, which would meet the youth mandate there.
The program administrators find out what the better cycle is or what the improved cycle is. How would they be able to establish or get better informed on changing the administration?
Thank you again for the question. And as I offered, I think there are many actors in the system of student recruitment that could offer some support and timelines and how that would best benefit meeting the government's goals, as well as being responsive to both industry and students. I've offered on behalf of CWIL Canada that we'd be more than willing to share what we have observed across all academic institutions in this country, the recruitment cycles that employers have with students. And we'd be happy to work with the program staff within the government to determine what an intake and application and timelines for informing employers their eligibility would look like to best support the program's objectives.
Any recommendations that you would make with respect to the administration of the program, the bureaucracy, in order to make it more efficient?
I appreciate the question. I don't think I'm in a position to comment too much on that. Obviously, with all programs that funding's involved, there's some due diligence necessary and forms. And I think that most employers and applicants are accepting of that circumstance. For us, the recommendations that we think might make the most sense is exploring the full year eligibility and exploring how we could inform employers earlier in the process that they're eligible so that they can continue to compete and hire top talent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Van Bynen, Madame Chabot, pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, and thank you to the witnesses. I will try to ask my questions in relationship with what you've shared, but you'll understand my question. The study that we're conducting is on the summer jobs program specifically in order to determine how we can change the program because the funding. One moment, please. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. It's my cell phone. Okay. So on the funding and on the different modalities of the program. So first of all, I'll start with you, Mr. Rampel. I understand from your testimony, unless I misunderstood, that we could combine both programs. The summer jobs program and the co-op program. Could you explain the benefits of combining these two programs, whereas funding is distinct and in some ways the objectives are not the same either? And also I'd like to add something with regards to skills. In Quebec, the federal program does not apply because in Quebec on the issue of skills and training, we have our own agreements and our own programs. And so what I'm interested in hearing about is how we can improve the flexibility of the summer jobs programs and how to improve the funding. In our opinion, we will see an increase in requests. We've observed this in our MPs' offices, and also if funding is stagnant or it's barely any higher than it was pre-pandemic, and this has created issues. We know that funding was cut actually by $400 million, well, almost 1/3 with regards to the pandemic budget. We know there was a specific context there. So with regards to the summer jobs program, because of course there are some students who are studying full-time, and this program allows them for X number of period of time to have a job because it's convenient, because they want full-time work. And for the employers, we know that the types of programs, we'll talk about day camps, about a lot of employers and organizations, community organizations, have programs in the summer, and they need young people in order to run the programs. So I'm trying to better understand what you're suggesting, which would be to combine, and I'd like to know what would be the benefits.
Thank you very much for the question. Just as a point of clarity, I don't think that CWIL is proposing we combine the programs, simply suggesting there might be a way to adjust some of the eligibility requirements to thoughtfully harmonize meeting the objectives of government across two different programs. So for example, with the Canada Summer Job Grant Program, the average funding, I think, is closer to 8 weeks of employment, whereas a traditional co-op experience for a post-secondary student might be much longer than that. And if we wanted to find ways and opportunities like that as an example to achieve the goals of both programs, there may make sense to review it in the review process from that lens. I do want to comment that these programs are designed for different audiences in some cases, and different employers are eligible under different programs. I just admit that occasionally there is some overlap in that, and if you wanted to be thoughtful in achieving two goals at the same time, we could review some of the eligibility of existing program structures. The length of funding available might be a consideration. Another might be, some work integrated learning students who meet industry needs, could be working in a part-time capacity, which again wouldn't be eligible for the current rules of the Canada Summer Job Wage Program. I hope that helps clarify. Thank you for the question.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Well, I have to say that in our practice as MPs, because you know that the summer job program, our objectives were set out, and then we see the result, and the issue of the 8 weeks that you're referring to, oftentimes this is the result of what we see because organizations, OSBLs and SMEs or municipalities, generally speaking, are going to ask for more than 8 weeks. But the result, because of the funding reality, is that they're given 8 weeks. So I do agree with you that this 8 weeks, sometimes for a project, you don't have enough time that is required in order to run a program to meet the needs of the setting and also the needs to obtain work experience for the students. So for the 8 weeks, I think that I do agree with you. And we are victims, if you will, of this because of the funding that we have to cut work hours. So this is a recommendation that it be more than 8 weeks, and the program is more than 8 weeks, but the reality is the funding, if I've understood. So the other thing that we've heard also in one of your recommendations was to change the calendar according to the needs of post-secondary students, and this is a recommendation that we've heard. We know that high school is not the same as post-secondary education. And once again, I think that this could be supported. Thank you.
Shabbat, Madame Zerillo for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just going to ask some quick statistics questions from Mr. Dale and then go to Mr. Rempel. So I note, Mr. Dale, that the Canada Summer Jobs Program, as it's on the Government of Canada website, aims to provide flexible and holistic services to help all young Canadians develop the skills and gain paid work experience to successfully transition into the labour market. And it was concerning to hear you say that there are groups underrepresented in the labour market that have a harder time to enter. So before I ask a little bit more about that, did I hear correctly that 60% of the open jobs do not require high school education?
Let me just check my notes. 58.1% of job vacancies require a high school diploma or less as of the most recent data.
Diploma or less. Another statistical question. You mentioned about the earnings, and I was interested in the last meeting on this, the gender split on earnings. So can you share that? What's the gender split? You had an overall number, but what's the gender split? Dale.
Who was that directed to, Madame Zerillo?
Mr. Dale, you were on mute for all of that.
Mr. Dale? You're, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
You'll have to go back on the gender split on earnings.
Yeah. I don't have that at hand, but we'd be happy to give that to the committee in writing.
Okay, and then just back to the other demographics, I would like to hear that for underrepresented groups as well. If you've got some information on that, that would be great. So I just wanted to go then to Mr. Rempel just to talk about this objective of the Summer Jobs Program for folks to have the skills and the ability to transition into the labor market. So my question to you was, what are some of the challenges that students share with you in dealing with moving from their summer jobs grant over to the labor force? And does it vary by gender or other demographics?
Thank you for the question. I don't think I'd be in a position to answer what our membership is hearing from the students directly. The feedback and recommendations that I wanted to share is just from the members of the CWIL community, primarily who work in higher education institutions, and how they've interacted and experienced their students and their employers that are interested in using the Canada Summer Job Grant Program. My apologies for not being able to answer that directly.
Yeah, that's all right, Mr. Rempel. So they don't report back on the experiences of any of their students when they're coming forward to your organization. They're just looking more about what their needs are to meet their objectives, like the employers are talking about their objectives, needs?
Yes, in some ways, I'll just explain how our membership would be involved with the recruitment process that might involve employers leveraging the program. Many colleges, polytechnics, and universities across this country have job boards that are available to their students and have a close-knit relationship with employers and industry partners that are recruiting students from those academic institutions. So in the scenarios where employers are looking to access the wage subsidy through this program, they may very well be also recruiting through the academic institution. Similarly, students would be accessing their career services department to connect with employers that are actively seeking in the summertime. And the feedback that they receive would be just through the regular conversations that an institution has with their employer base that are using the services at the school. In the context of work-integrated learning, one of the recommendations that we're offering is around quality work experiences. It's our belief in CWIL that having structure around a work experience and having educational elements and facilitated learning that is in the spirit of a relationship between a higher educational institution, the student, and the employer tends to yield the highest return on skills acquisition and growth and development through a student cohort. This is obviously what we work towards and champion at CWIL. And it's not to say that summer jobs or part-time jobs that don't have that academic structure and support can't be meaningful. They absolutely can. We just know that when there is supports and there's an educational environment and the post-secondary institution is involved, those are the ones where we can have and thoughtfully structure meaningful, high-quality work experiences for our learners and for the students and for the employers as well.
Quick question then. So what data is captured on your end, though? Like, is there post surveys for the partners that you work with? What kind of information is available? I guess ultimately the goal is to make sure that these folks can transition into the labor market. So just wondering how you measure that. And I'll take this opportunity to say that Healthcare Can came to see me yesterday about stipends for research students and the amount of good work they do and how little they get paid. So I'm also interested if you hear anything about this correlation between employment and housing right now for students, because we know it's a very, very difficult time for students.
Thank you for the question. I don't think that many members of the CWIL community or post-secondary institutions are explicitly tracking which of their students are receiving summer jobs and the employers that are receiving the stipend. So I'm not aware personally of any line of sight that would offer that insight. And if it did exist, it would likely be more localized to individual academic institutions. It wouldn't be information that CWIL would be collecting or asking for. So I'm afraid I can't answer that question for you directly, but thank you.
Madame Zerillo, Mr. Aitchison for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start, if I could, with Dr. Rempel. You're on the hot seat, Mr. Rempel, Dr. Rempel. In 2023, Canada Summer Jobs, the top 5 national priorities for the program were to focus on youth with disabilities, Black and other racialized youth, Indigenous youth, small businesses, and not-for-profit organizations that self-report as having leadership from groups that are underrepresented in the labor market, and small business and not-for-profit organizations in environmental sectors. You may have heard, Dr. Rempel, that Canada is in the midst of a housing crisis right now, and I'm wondering what you think about the idea of maybe changing the priorities, altering them, adjusting them, adding to it maybe, to reflect national priorities and urgent national needs, such as housing, or also maybe even organizations that support addiction and mental health treatments, those kinds of things. Would you consider that?
Thank you for the question, and hot seat indeed. I think the space that we're most qualified to speak to is our line of business, which is supporting students in work integrated learning. And in the spirit of our mandate and sort of sphere of opinion on government policy, we do appreciate and absolutely value all wage subsidy programs for youth and for work integrated learning. I can say with confidence that our members are very appreciative, and employers require it and inspires them to continue to reinvest in our youth through these programs. So from that lens and that vantage point, I can share that we appreciate the programs, but I don't think CEWA would be in a position to comment on the other elements of your question. Thank you.
Okay, so, okay, well, let me try this then. I'm not wanting to comment on or give an opinion on whether these should be considered priorities within the program. Do you think that the summer jobs program could be adjusted or could be used as a tool to focus on, well, let's take the labor shortage, for example, in the housing sector. Labor shortage is one of the big challenges we have in the housing sector. And we just don't have enough electricians, carpenters, skilled labor, skilled trades. That's not a secret, I don't think, to anybody. Do you think that the Canada Summer Jobs Program would need changing to maybe try to help address those issues, or could be changed? Is it, you understand the system better than I do, I'm sure?
Thank you for the question. And I probably don't understand the system or how the program decisions are created any better than you. And I'm afraid I wouldn't feel in a position to be able to comment on that. Our awareness working with youth that are traditionally in co-op and work integrated learning experiences is that it is difficult and it is competitive, and we do need employers and industry partners to continue participating and creating high quality work experience for our students. They rely on it, and all programs that support that mandate and support the student success are programs that we appreciate.
Thanks for that. Okay, I'd like to maybe go to Mr. Dale and speak a little more about the skilled labor shortages. I'll just share with you. CMHC released a report in October 2022 called "Labor Capacity Constraints and Supply Across Large Provinces in Canada," and that report projected that Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia would need to double housing starts over the next decade to reach CMHC's 2030 affordability supply target, but that labor constraints will limit these provinces. In Ontario, be limited to about 36%, Quebec 41%, and 29% in BC, under sort of a best case scenario. I'm wondering if you can tell us what Statistics Canada is seeing in the labor market when it comes to increasing the skilled trades participation in Canada, and if maybe you think maybe the summer jobs program might be a way to assist if necessary there.
Thank you for the question. I can give you a sense of the range of data that we have that responds to that question. I haven't necessarily I don't necessarily have the analysis or the results to present today, but I can tell you that we have quite detailed information on job vacancies by industry and occupation. So we can speak to vacancies in the construction sector, vacancies in the skilled trades. Similarly, we can tell you we have detailed information on employment by skilled trades, detailed information on participation in apprenticeship programs. So we do have the elements that would respond to your question. It would require some integration of that data, some analysis to respond more fully to the particular policy questions that you're asking.
Just quickly, if I could, I realize I'm running out of time, but I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that data with the committee, if that's possible, because I'm very interested in that. Thanks.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. Mr. Collins for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And through you to Mr. Rempel. Mr. Rempel, this is a wildly popular program, as I believe you could imagine. Well over 90% of the respondents of employers commented that it was a very successful program, and of course our youth responded as well through a voluntary survey, and they responded with almost the same level of support, just under 90%, and that's almost unheard of. For those of us who've been an elected official for a while, at any level of government, getting a 90% score on any service or program that we offer is almost unheard of. And so I missed my opportunity, Mr. Chair, to commend staff who were here last week. We ran out of time, and I wanted to commend them for managing this program because it is wildly successful. And so my question would be around its popularity and the capacity to deliver more services. Of course, the program was doubled since 2015. Our government has doubled support for the program in terms of the number of placements. And it was increased even more so through the pandemic and to provide employers, and of course, obviously, as part of the youth employment strategy, our youth with opportunities through the pandemic to ensure that they gained employment during some very challenging times. And so my question would be, you've been in business for 50 years, I think you mentioned at the start of your presentation. And my question would be, could you give us a snapshot of pre-pandemic scenario, during the pandemic, how did your organization kind of shift gears to accommodate students and employers under very challenging circumstances, people working from home? And then, how did you come out of the pandemic in terms of continuing this program and offering the placements through the employers and the industries that you work with?
Thank you very much for the question. To speak to some observations, at least in the world of work-integrated learning pre-pandemic, I think it's fair to say that co-ops and internships and work-integrated learning became very popular and we're on a growth path across most post-secondary institutions, whether it be colleges, polytechnics, or universities. And many organizations, or at least many of the institutions, are looking for ways to balance the needs of students and learners and the identification of work experiences through our industry and employer partners. That's always a bit of a juggling act for post-secondary institutions. The demand from the student side is very, very high. There always needs to be enough employer opportunity for students to experience these incredible learning opportunities. To answer your question about during the pandemic, obviously with the economy and business unable to operate or to have students in the workplace, we pivoted in a very similar way to many others. We advocated for employers to keep their co-op and will students as best they could and leverage virtual work as a solution for that. And we're thankful that many employers did respond and were able to, in some cases, salvage the education of students that would not be able to graduate if they were unable to have these working experiences that are a part of their academic program. And we're very thankful for that contribution. Similarly, the funding through a range of federal programs, including the Student Work Placement Program, as well as the Canada Summer Job Program, are absolutely critical to inspiring our employers and industry partners to create enough opportunities to meet the student needs across the spectrum of work integrated learning. And now that we've sort of returned to a case of a bit more normal, I think there's going to continue to experience that supply and demand curve of students that need eligible, high quality work experiences as part of their academic journey through post-secondary. And then there's also a cohort of students that may not be enrolled in post-secondary education who also require work experiences to enable them to develop the skills to pursue their career paths, even if it's not in a higher education direction. And it's our belief that the wage subsidies in that environment do inspire employer participation, and that is required to support the youth and our learners' needs.
Thanks, Mr. Rempel. You heard from Mr. Dale some of the gaps that we still have in terms of accommodating and assisting equity-seeking groups. You did mention that at the tail end of your introduction. Can you provide some information to the committee in terms of the progress that you've made with employers and industries in terms of providing more support for those groups that are underrepresented in the workforce, based on the information that Mr. Dale has presented to us and information that we know is widely available beyond the StatsCan information?
Thank you again for the question. As a professional association, many of our members are the staff people and stakeholders that participate in student placements and student work experiences. And as a community across Canada, we're all very vested in ensuring that all students have access to quality work experiences. And as a professional association, we have provided a fair amount of discourse and dialogue amongst our national conferences around our professional development opportunities, and ensuring that colleagues that are involved in the matchmaking of students with employers have had access to training and advocacy materials to support their interactions with employers. I think many of us know that there are the legal imperatives, but there's also the systemic barriers that might fall outside of the legal frameworks that equity deserving groups may be experiencing when they're seeking work. In the CWIL community, we do our best to make sure that we're advocating to employers and industry fair and equitable recruitment practices. We're equipping members of our community with the tools.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
training they
Rempel.
need. Thank you.
Thank you. Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et demi.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank you, Mr. Rempel. I think that really do see a difference between the two programs. Everything that is co-op, work experience. In Quebec, we have a lot of universities that use this. It's an education program, but the summer jobs program, we're trying to see how we can improve it. This is a standalone program that responds to special objectives that are not a workplace placement. It's not a co-op program. It's not a skills acquisition program. So I'm trying to understand what you're saying here, and I'm sorry with the witness from Statistics Canada, but given that there's no specific statistics on the Canada Summer Jobs Wages Subsidy Program, well, that's why I'm continuing with you, Mr. Rempel. So here's the question. Do you think that the Canada Summer Jobs Program should be increased with regards to the offers of employment, that it should be improved with regards to offers of employment and funding for summer jobs?
Thank you again for the question. The context that I'm providing is from the lens of work integrated learning. And I think what happens is employers who are recruiting summer students sometimes don't know whether a student is actually in a co-op for academic credit or a student who's looking for a job between academic terms. And in that context, we offered some, considerations to the program that might increase the eligibility to support some of those co-op students. But in a general sense, we're firm believers of student success. We're believers of students having quality work experiences, and additional funding to create additional wage subsidy that allows for that environment to take place is something that we would be supportive of, absolutely.
Well, already the summer jobs program is quite minimal, and it should at least provide the minimum wage of provinces, because for the summer jobs, I'm trying to better understand, because oftentimes it's not. It's already been a student jobs program, but now it's 15 to 30. So let's hope that they're studying, and it does provide work experience to our youth that could qualify, but it could be a significant work experience for a summer job. So how this program that is different than a co-op program or an internship or a placement, how could it be more flexible? You mentioned to have it over the entire year. Do you think that for the summer jobs, do you think that should be extended over the entire year? Could you explain what would be the benefits to that?
Thank you for the question. We know that students are in sort of non-traditional academic cycles. So students may have breaks between academic semesters that may exist within the fall semester, may exist within the winter semester, and they need work during those breaks in their academic learning, similar to the historic model being, summertime, when most post-secondary students would be looking for work. But they are available in the fall and winter and in greater numbers. Similarly, This program is a wage subsidy that supports employers and industry access youth talent and provide them with quality work experiences. And as we know, industry and employers have projects and have work all year long. And it does seem like there might be an opportunity to consider extending the program across all 3 semesters. That would meet the needs of employers that have work in the fall and the winter for students, and it would meet the needs of students that are on academic breaks on the fall and the winter. I hope that responds to your question.
And Mr. Rempel, Madame Zarillo, to conclude the first round. Madame Zarillo.
Thank you so much. And my questions are going to be for Mr. Dale, but I just wanted to recognize Mr. Rempel today and just all of the information that you gave us today. I really, really appreciate it. Mr. Dale, I firmly believe in the value of fact-based decision-making, and you presented today the wider understanding of the labor market. So based on the data that you see, on the insights that you see and your office must talk about, what would you advise the government to focus on for Canada Summer Jobs Grants in 2024, knowing that the objective is to help young Canadians develop the skills and gain the paid work experience to successfully transition into the labor market?
Mr. Dale, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. I do appreciate the question. I'd ask you to understand that it's not within my role at Statistics Canada to provide policy advice or policy evaluation. So unfortunately, I'm not able to answer the question.
So I'll frame it in a different way, because the dailies come out and the dailies often are insights rather than data. They actually look at the data and kind of insight the data. So I guess I would ask the question in a different way. The data that I see in front of me talks about declines in certain channels. Like we know that construction, significant decline in workers in construction, but increase in workers or job opportunities in healthcare and social assistance. So I guess my question would be, is it important to invest in those job roles that are increasing, or is it important to fill the gap on those job roles that are decreasing? Is there a conversation about that within Statistics Canada?
So I hope you'll understand that I'm not avoiding the question. I can't speak to the wisdom of investments in one area or the other, but maybe I could answer your question as follows. One could certainly look at, as I did in my opening statement, look at the overall trends in the labor market. So in the summer of 2022, the labor market was extremely tight, historically high unemployment rates, historically high job vacancies. Since then, that tightness has eased somewhat. Employment growth has been steady, but not quite in proportion to population growth. Vacancies have fallen 30%. It's an indication that labor shortages have eased. And as you suggested in your question, one could look at trends in employment or vacancies by industry. So the question was asked about the construction sector. One could ask, one could use the data to address the question. Would it be wise to increase investment in the construction sector? I think that's a valid question, and one could use Statistics Canada data to inform decisions around that question.
Madame Zarillo, and Mr. Dale, I would like to thank the witnesses for appearing in the first round and providing testimony to the committee members. With that, we'll suspend for a couple of moments while we get ready for the second group of panelists. Again, to those witnesses that appeared, thank you so much. We'll suspend for 3 minutes. witnesses. In this timeline, we have present in the room Michelle Quentin, Club de Tennis Saint-Jérôme. And appearing by video conference, we have Kim Thomas from Neptune Nation Artistique. So we will begin with Mr. Quentin for 5 minutes. Mr. Quentin, you have the floor.
Monsieur Quentin, 5 minutes pour vos remarques liminaires, s'il vous plaît. À vous la parole.
I'm starting? Yes. Sorry. I'm not very familiar with the procedure here, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide my opinion. I am the chair of a local tennis club in Saint-Jérôme, and I'm also the chair of the regional association. When I was advised that there was going to be a decrease in funding for the Canada Summer Jobs Program, I was really disappointed because this is a program that everyone is in agreement that I think that everyone recognizes the importance of this program and of the program's objectives for young people as well as for the not-for-profits and the small businesses. We are a non-profit organization in the sports sector, and this is really important for health, for physical and mental health of the population. And also, there's a community aspect to this. But what I would like to speak to is the importance of this program. In our particular case, if we look at our region, Saint-Jérôme, in our region, in our MRC, we're talking about 600,000 people. So imagine a program such as this one, if it continues to be advertised correctly, imagine the importance that the program has. We represent many volunteers and very solid volunteers. So many times there are many retired people who had fantastic careers, and afterwards they give of themselves and of their time to their communities. And here you have a program where you can match youth who are about to enter the labor market, and it's really important. And when you advertise this type of program in a setting such as ours, well, of course, budget is an important issue. In other words, we have to think about that these budgets should never go down. We want to see increases in these budgets, especially if you think it's a very good thing to make this program more accessible and to broaden it, that it be more accessible. In my case, I find it difficult to sign up for it because the machine is a little bit far away from the labor market. We do have very, very good cooperation with all the employees at the Employment Canada, but oftentimes we're doing things online and it's hard. And when we call, we have to wait 48 hours, and it's never the same person who gives us a response. And when this registration part will be improved, you're going to see an increased amount of requests because the need exists. This is a program that no one will be opposed to. Everyone will be pleased to have this program. So we have to think of being logical with regards to funding. This is something that we need. In our case, Well, it took us coordinators. We needed coordinators in order to develop tennis. Then we needed people responsible for funding. We needed equipment. Then regionally, we have to go visit different municipalities so that they have tennis infrastructure. So you have to have a structured approach. And so we're going to have a lot of very good jobs. As the gentleman was saying, it's extremely important to have good jobs, and we do. And I can tell you through my experience that many young people on the labor market right now, it was their first job. And we had them for a 2 or 3 year period during their studies, and afterwards they obtained very good jobs. And so I would just like to raise awareness to this, that this program is very important. It's important to maintain your budgets and to think of how you can regularly increase the funding for this program. I don't know if I have any time left. Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased to have met you all. Thank you.
If you required the translation, would somebody show Mr. Quentin? Yes, okay. We will now, thank you, Monsieur Quentin. Ms. Thomas, for 5 minutes, please.
Oui, bonjour.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to appear before you. I am in charge of the Neptune Artistic Swimming Club in the Laurentians. And on our side, we benefit from the summer job program for many years. And this allows us to hold a day camp each year. And this day camp has 2 goals. One, to hire students in the region and to allow parents to go to work. In our region, there's a crying need for day camps. And so with the funding that we obtain, it allows us to keep costs for a specialized camp relatively low. And it allows the parents to register their children, and we can recruit and have viability for the club. Our program makes it so that the students that we hire in the summer, and we rehire them, they become our trainers during the evening, during the school year, and this allows them to work 35 hours a week. And as I was saying earlier, the program is limited to 8 weeks because it's a summer. But if we could extend it, oftentimes we start a bit late, it would give us more means to do so. For small not-for-profits like ours, we had a lot of problems with COVID. We had a lot of loss of funding, and this can bring to the cancellation of our day camp. And last year, our project was recommended for only 1 job, and so we cannot allow ourselves in the swimming program to have only 1 coach. When there's children in the water, we need to have 2 swimming coaches. So the costs were too high, so we didn't, and this has an impact over the entire year. Especially our organization uses registration monies for day camps in order to help to reduce costs. And so with a small organization such as ours, our artistic swimming club, we have 60 swimmers over the year. And we use this program in order to increase visibility, to allow parents to go to work, and allows us to have more programs during the year. So when a program such as this one is affected, and we don't necessarily have any other alternatives, it does have a direct impact on our budget. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
The first round of questioning with Madame Ferrari for 6 minutes.
Merci, Mr. Chair. I apologize, my French. It's not there yet that I'm confident to speak in it, so I appreciate you being here and sharing your experiences. I hope you can both hear me with translation. Your translation is working, Mr. Canton? Oui?
No.
Okay, now try it. Do you see it says? Thanks, Tracy. I'm going to speak now. Can you hear a translation in your ear so that you can hear what I am saying to you?
Okay.
How about now? I'm going to speak now. Can you hear a translator in your ear? Bonjour! Bienvenue! Mr. Kenton, as well as Madam Thomas, thank you. And I think actually what we just witnessed was a little bit of what we see in my office as a member of Parliament of sometimes a barrier in being able to access stuff if you don't know how to use it. So you referred to not being able to access the program through applying for it, the website. You were sort of saying that was a challenge for you. And again, much like the technology you're experiencing at this very moment, and you're really making me realize how deeply I want to learn French. But I would ask, how would you like to see the program improved so that your, very amazing volunteers who might be senior, who might not know the technology or how to apply online or how to do that, that's a big barrier. How do we improve that? What would you like to see?
I think, well, you've seen the issue here, the issue that I'm 78 years old, and so it's hard for me to play with technology, to understand technology, but what's hard is there are many people working for our community organizations, and when they're faced with this challenge, because it's impersonal, and so when you register, sometimes there's a problem. At some point, I had trouble writing $30, and I didn't know it was a point or to put a dot or a comma, and it's a small issue, but when I want help, when I have an issue, I call, and then they have 48 hours to answer. And well, I mean, 48 hours is a long time to wait. And so what I would like in the end, as an example, in our region, in the Laurentides, for us to have someone in charge, someone responsible for the region, and that we'll be able to see a person. I like to meet someone in person. And then you go and you solve the problem. But what I think is that you're losing a lot of people. And what I'm noticing, too, is that now that I've discovered you, I've discovered this source of funding, I want to access this funding for my organization. And I want to communicate this message to many people in the region. So there will be more requests. And so I would like for us to be able to receive information. In other words, to bring back Employment Canada in our region, in the Laurentides, and to have someone in our region to be able to answer. Because when I speak to a person and when I explain my problem, well, they say, okay, that's fine, but if you call me back, I say, well, can I call you back? And they say, oh, well, anyone else can answer. It won't necessarily be me. And so if you're providing service correctly, let me tell you, there will be many young people who will be able to benefit from a job. And there will be many organizations that will be able to benefit from the work of the youth. And it's a win-win situation. The community will benefit as well. And everyone will be happy. I mean, and at that, too, it will. So if you can have the registration be closer to the labor market needs, and if you can facilitate the process of registration, when January runs around, it makes me nervous because I know that I'm going to have to sign up, and I prepare my task descriptions for the form, and I know that I am going to have to sign up, and it's a long process for me. And so I would really like to have help close by, to go to an office of Employment Canada and to receive assistance. I mean, for sure, signing up is one issue, but another aspect of this is that you should never think of lowering budgets. Never, no. You should always think of increasing budgets each year, unless you want to stop with the program. If you want to stop the publicizing the program, well then, okay. But if you want to continue with the program, this is a win-win project. This is a wonderful win-win program. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Your answer. I think what you said is what we hear often. Customer service and having people in their office show up to work makes a very big difference. So thank you very much. I'm sure I'm out of time.
Merci. Yeah. Madame Ferrari et Monsieur Quentin. Miss Murray? Ms. Murray,
Merci
for
beaucoup,
6 minutes.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for everything you said with regards to your program and also the value for the youth who benefit from it and the organizations as well. And I have a few short questions for yourself and also Mrs. Thomas. Because you are the beneficiaries of the program.
Vous êtes ceux qui profitent de ce programme.
Can we ask you if the program went well? What went well, what didn't, and what could be improved? Do you have a survey after the program? Yes? The program works very well.
Has Service Canada surveyed you as an employer to get your feedback?
Oui, on a été...
On m'a demandé mon avis.
Yes, I was asked my opinion, and I did provide it. And also, I gave to Mr. Neyman earlier my position, and that's why I'm very happy to be here. It's so important, and so I think that this is a very important committee for everyone, because this is a really nice program. It's a very, very good program, and I've benefited from it as well. At Employment Canada, at the time, it was for careers, and so I had been offered a job afterward. I had a placement. I worked in labor relations and in staffing myself. So I am well placed to know about this program and that it's a very good one.
Continuer un peu. Merci beaucoup.
So the government has tried to understand what is working and what can be improved. So it's a department that is collecting the data, but I do have another question. For 15 years or so, I had this program in my riding, and in 2015, we doubled it. So it's possible that it will be cut one day. And is it better to have more employees and less weeks, or more weeks and less employees? If we have to choose, well, I think that I didn't have enough weeks. Okay, so I did not have enough weeks. That's what I'm hearing in my writing as well. It's preferable to have a greater amount of weeks, even though it can require lesser people. I have another question to ask, because your fields are both in sports, and so it's important to have students. Is it important to have students that are looking for a career in your field, or is it of benefit, even if won't be their job in the future, but they can learn how to start on time, how to resolve problems, how to conduct oneself at work, all these types of experiences on the job. In our case, these are students who are doing a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and they want to work in training and in sport. So oftentimes we have, well, they're usually girls, because in artistic swimming is usually young women. So these young women are studying to become coaches or kinesiologists themselves. So it does apply, of course. Yes, there's a direct application, but there's also the benefit of having a first student job. We have two types of employees. We have our employees who are doing their bachelor's degree, but we also have assistants, and they are 15 to 17 years old, and it's their first job. And so this allows them to have a first introduction to the labor market, and they get their first experience. So we're not limited to saying, oh, it has to be linked to your future job, but we're opening it up to other youth who are obtaining their first experience in the job market. We have the same thing, because personally, we've had some students who are pharmacists right now, and it was their summer job. And this allowed them to learn how to communicate, to meet with employees, municipal employees, and they had all kinds of experiences that helped them in their lifetime. Of course, it's important for youth. We have to be targeted. We try to hire people who will work in the field, but other people can benefit as well, of course.
Merci.
Thank you. Mrs. Chabot, 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both. From the beautiful region of the Laurentians. And I think that this testimony goes hand in hand with our study. It's simple. It's to look at the funding of the Canada Summer Job Wage Subsidy Program, because there's been a huge cut to this program, and also to see how we can improve it. Because I think that there's nobody here in the committee that doubts the value of the program. We're trying to see how we can improve it. Mrs. Thomas. Have you been benefiting from this program for several years now? It's my 6th year with the board of this particular swimming club, and so and before me, I think we had access to the program for 2 years, so 7 years total, with a COVID year during which we were not able to have a day camp. There was no day camp during COVID. So it's been ongoing for 6 years. And we've been beneficiaries of the program. And you said in your testimony, Mrs. Thomas, that this year, if you had asked for 2 jobs, well, you had asked for 2 jobs and only one was awarded. So this is for the benefit of the youth, and it's also for the benefit of the parents and the work experience for a youth with their first job. That's correct? Yes. We had asked for 3 because, generally speaking, we ask for 3 positions. And the previous year, we had obtained funding for 3. This year, we didn't even get 2. And given the cost that we had to increase, and we were not able to hire the 3. So, did they ask you? Did you complain? Did you appeal? Did you speak to the impacts that this would have on your organization? Well, I did fill out the report at the end of the program. So when we decided to not hold the day camp and we canceled the project, I sent out the report to the summer job program. So what was the impact in the community for parents that this day camp was canceled? I imagine, also, I understand we're talking about artistic swimming, but if we look at statistics that we received, unfortunately, during the summer, that's just an example. We know that swimming is an important sport for youth, and so I do understand that, and specifically, I think we have a high. We've seen a lot of these camps go by the wayside, and so what would be your recommendation? To take into account the reality of the people who are making applications. For us to have one position makes it so that we have to stop our camp because we need a minimum of 2 employees. We need 2 people supervising in order to ensure the safety of the swimmers. All our employees, ourselves, our trainers are also lifeguards. They all have to be lifeguards. So at that point, in our specific case, the component that we absolutely have to have, we need to have 2 people on the job. Even if we only had 10 children, the ratio that's required is higher because it's swimming. So we need 2 coaches for 1 group. Thank you for your commitment. I understand that with regards to the summer job program, it's not your first experience. And so with regards to for demand, well, I haven't been doing this for that long. Well, for the employment applications, well, someone else was doing it. And so we were lucky because we had a treasurer at some point who was really used to this. And so he always would make the requests, and then it stopped. And then I said, well, this doesn't make any sense. And so then we started it again. But this year, of course, we saw the cuts. And there was a slightly good timing in a way, because at Saint-Jérôme, the city surprised us and renovated all our tennis courts. We have 24 of them. And so we had cuts on one side, but this year it was okay. But next year there's going to be an issue. We have new tennis courts. We have beautiful tennis courts, but next year, of course, we would love to have our coordinator, someone in charge for funding, people to work. Yes, this is where I'm trying to get at. What would have been the impact otherwise? Well, the impact is that at some point, it's the volunteers that have to do everything, and the volunteers have to compensate, and then you have to find people who are prepared to give a lot of their personal time, and then we burn out our volunteers. Of course, there are volunteers that will always come back, but since we've had this summer jobs program, the youth help us a lot, and they teach us a lot of new things as well. It's really important. It's really important to continue with this union. Thank you, Mrs. Chabot and Mr. Quentin. Madame Zarillo, 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to start with Ms. Thomas, because you've just talked about so many points in your presentation today. So I know this program is has an objective to be of benefit to the employees. It has benefit for students to be able to gain the skills they need to go out into work. But as you said, there's so many other important benefits related to the kids being out of school and having opportunities to learn a life skill around swimming, being able to connect to their community, and also to helping out parents that go to work, which is very often the woman that is looking after childcare during the summer. So I see this study as being very gendered. This whole Canada Summer Jobs Program, work itself is gendered. Its employment insurance was made based on gender. The labor stats are collected on gender. So this is very interesting to me. And we saw in the data, last time we met, that 2/3 of the jobs that go through Canada Summer Jobs programs go to women and girls. So I do take a little bit of personal offense when we cut jobs that matter so much to women and girls. So my question is really around that. You mentioned that you had asked for 3 jobs and it went down to 1. My question is, how far in advance are you planning to have, let's say, those 3 jobs? How far in advance do you plan on your programs? And did you have to spend any marketing money or any money up front to prepare for those anticipated jobs?
En fait, on prépare à...
We start getting ready. We do it every year. We know our plan is to have at least 3 jobs, and we'll add some if necessary. So past the first 3, let's say past the first 2 jobs that we need to be able to run the program, well then, depending on registrations, we can proceed with the camp if we have at least these 2 positions. But it's round the year. The artistic swimming is round the year, and the camp is added to our regular activities. So we do take all that into account in our planning. Of course, we do need to do some marketing as well. In the Laurentians, we're very lucky to have a center for activities. I don't quite know what the acronym stands for, to be honest, but they do advertise our camps. We have a partnership with them, and they take on the entire registration segment through their website. They transfer the payments to us, so we don't have to do so much marketing or advertising of our camps, but we do use social networks as much as we can. We obviously work with young people. We have a young team, so we make use of social media. And we also have a partnership with municipalities that allow us to use their booklets.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So my next question is just around making the program better. Part of this study is just to find out where are the gaps and where can we potentially make this program better for the students, but I also see this as a wonderful ability to build community. So I'm asking about what additional questions should be asked on the post survey, because I understand that there is a mandatory for employees and an optional for the students that take on the roles. What other questions would be important, do you think, for the government to have a good understanding of the success and gaps of this program?
Un peu comme je disais précédemment.
Like I said earlier, I think the real needs of the organization should be taken into account. So, for instance, if there's partnerships where or requirements, for instance, our employees need to be certified lifeguards, so are their classes needed upstream? these cost money. If our coaches don't have that training, they have to take the training before being hired. We do refund the classes later on, but those are important questions. For instance, if they have these qualifications. And then on our end, for the employer, having more information on the needs, the admissibility criteria, allow us to take into account all these steps.
Thank you so much. And one of the other things I was interested in when officials were here the last meeting was just on how much there's an opportunity to educate young people about income tax and about filing their taxes and what kind of entitlements are they potentially eligible for. Have you ever heard from your employees or your students that work with you that they'd like more information on that, or is that something totally outside of this program?
Pour être vraiment
To be entirely honest, we do help them out quite a lot in this. We use our pay systems, so our employees get this education, this training. They know how to go get their pay slips, and when we do our taxes at the end of the year, everything is online, and we guide them, we help them out in how to find their T4, how to find their Quebec paperwork. So that's not offered by the program, but we do it, and I think that education would be extremely beneficial for these young people. They need to know how to manage their documents, their tax papers. Where do I get my pay slip? Where do I get my documents to file taxes? That could be a very interesting option to add to the program.
See, Madame Zerillo, Ms. Falk for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank the witnesses for their contributions to this study of the Canada Summer Jobs Program and being here today. I think it's very important that government programs are accessible to those that they are designed to serve, and that they are fair, and that the delivery of the program is also efficient. As employers and applicants with firsthand experience, I greatly appreciate your testimony here today. Ms. Thomas, I'd like to start with you, if possible. I know we had heard from Mr. Quentin on his experience with the application process, but I'm just wondering, in your experience, because you did say that you have applied for this for several years with Canada Summer Jobs, has the application process been simple and easy to follow?
dans les faits.
In reality, I work in IT on an online platform all year round, so it's not that much of a challenge for me, but I have to say it's not the most user-friendly platform, and I can absolutely understand the challenges that might pose for some people, such as Mr. Quentin pointed out. But I have to say it wasn't a nightmare for me to work with that platform given my skills, but it is definitely not intuitive or user-friendly. Could it be improved? Could it be made more user-friendly? Absolutely. What's actually difficult is the first step. Once you connect online, you're brought to this page where you have to find your business and then click on it to be able to find the form. All of that is quite hard to navigate, to be honest. Like the visual is difficult. It could definitely be improved, but it wasn't a challenge for me personally.
Thank you. Would you say that the process and the website use plain language, meaning easy to understand, simple, straightforward language?
Ouais.
Yeah, fairly. It's fairly easy to understand, but it could be improved to be more intuitive.
Plus on l'utilise,
The more we use it, the more we start to familiarize ourselves with the platform. It's not bad at all, but there are small details that can be tricky. For instance, recently I was asked for a confirmation code and I couldn't remember, and then I lost my page. If you take too long, the page times out and you have to start over again. So I had to start again, re-enter all the information, rewrite the task description, and have to go through all this red tape. Those are small details that can be tricky. Of course, now you have Ms. Thomas, who is quite knowledgeable in those things. And I have to say, I'm starting to get quite good with the platform. But honestly, it's not the worst website. It's not terrible. But, you know, why make things simple when they could be complicated? I can see that making things simple is quite hard. You know, why make it simple when it could be so complicated and confusing? So let's make it confusing, you know. But that's the message we get. Shouldn't things be simple? A lot of these pages could be skipped.
I also agree. I think when things are simplified, it also takes away a barrier from people accessing a program. I also quickly want to ask both of you. I know my office has heard a lot of complaints on timing. There sometimes the launch of the program isn't enough time to get the application in, or when you find out that you have been accepted for funds, sometimes the timing doesn't seem right when kids are out of university and that type of thing. I'll just start with Ms. Thomas first quickly, if you can tell me if you've had any problems with the timing in that area, and then I'll follow up with Mr. Cantain, please, very quickly.
Indeed. There's never a fixed date, and that makes it very hard to know, first of all, when the program is going to happen. We're always on high alert in January. Is it January 15th, January 30th? Because once it opens, we have about a month to submit all our requests. And then the timelines to get an answer, well, that's never regular. It's not like we know, for instance, on the April 15th, the answers come in. Sometimes it's early April, sometimes later. You can never know. For us, we have bookings. We need to commit with cities, say when we need the pool. And if we cancel too late, we get charged cancellation fees. So if we don't get an answer early enough, we won't know if we'll need it or not. And if the answer comes in too late, and like last year, we only get one job, well, then we can't keep our booking, and then we have to pay cancellation fees. It's very hard, the fact that the dates are never specific. If we knew the dates were the same every year, then we'd know. We need to submit our applications by January 15th. We're going to get answers by April 15th. That would make it so much easier for us to manage our planning.
Merci, Madame Fogg.
Thank you, Ms. Fogg. And Ms. Thomas.
Ms. Caddis for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur Quentin, pour votre...
Thank you, Mr. Quentin, for your comments today. I have a question that's a bit more general, but I do think it would help our committee. Would you have maybe one or two key recommendations for us? For instance, you talked about a lot of different topics today, but would you have maybe one or two key recommendations? I think the most important thing I could recommend is to continue to advertise the program and to streamline applications. There needs to be work done so that the program can be advertised, but also made more accessible. We need to make everything closer to the realities of the ordinary citizen. We're talking about a network of 600,000 people. It would be nice to make everything simpler and bring it closer to the community. That way we could have more applications. This is going to happen. More and more young people will be beneficiaries of the program. If the program is streamlined and is advertised, I mean, organizations will definitely apply and a lot of good work will be done. I would really love to see some work done on that part. Otherwise, I think everything else is very nice. The program is good. And as I've said before, to maintain the budget is very important. Always keep evolving and progressing. I know that money is a touchy issue, but I'm sure there can be cuts made elsewhere. Inaudible. Of course, yes, there's a video. On the question of accessibility, you've spoken at length about accessibility. Would you say that there's an issue with technology, for instance, the website, anything having to do with the online application? I don't think so. Let's take my example. It took me a while to get into gear and to actually realize that the program existed. It was there right under my nose. I sit on 2 organizations, on one of which we submit applications for jobs, but not in the other. And I just didn't click. I'm an administrator, and I didn't even realize it was a thing. At some point, I thought, well, why does one of these organizations have access to this, but not the other? And so I asked someone on the team to submit an application, and we got the job. Goodness gracious. I mean, so what'd you think? I told my friend, go and apply. You'll get help for your organization. I mean, there's a lot of organizations that need the help. And then I saw that we could broaden the scope. For our organization, our budget is $9,000 for the entire region. That's crazy. And then we have a small local club with a $70,000 budget. I mean, $70,000 for a small local organization. And then at the regional organization, our budget is $9,000. And for years, we've been happy and making do with what we had. And so I actually spoke to the person in charge of funding to ask an increase in budget to better serve the region. And that's when I realized, I mean, if the budgets get cut, how will we survive? I'd like for the budget to keep up with the pace of growth. So budget, advertising, and easier registration. Thank you very much. Madame Chabot, the floor is yours for 2.5 minutes. Thank you. I'd like to come back on a question that was asked earlier, and that has to do with funding. I've seen it myself in my riding in Terrasse de Blainville and the Lower Laurentians. There's the number of jobs applied for and also the number of weeks. Generally speaking, and I might be mistaken, but I think most organizations ask for 10 or 12 weeks and are given 8. Could you talk to us a bit about the repercussions of this? And my question is for both witnesses. You'll each have maybe a minute to answer. Do you think that 8 weeks is enough, or should the number of weeks be increased? I've had a lot of issues with that this year. I thought, I'll find a workaround. I'll make them work less per week and stretch it out. Because if they start in May, really, the busy period is July, August, and September. So I thought, instead of having them stop working, I cut their weeks and gave them 24 hours. But then I got called and told I wasn't allowed to do that and had to give them 30 hours. And that's when I got stuck in what I talked about earlier, where everything got complicated. There were requests, calls, and we had to find a lot of workarounds. Microphone was turned off. Yes, we need them till September. Ms. Thomas, your answer? Very similar. Our needs start earlier in May because we need to set up the program for the summer. We often hire students in May. They start working part-time or on weekends, and then from end of June onward, when school is over, they work full-time till end of August. So our full-time weeks are in July and August. But having an opportunity to give them part-time work before that while we are planning our programs, that would be essential. But like Mr. Quentin said, we're stuck with 30-hour weeks, and you can't give 30 hours to a student who's still in school. That's interesting. So the flexibility of hours could be interesting. Thank you, Madame Chabot. Madame Zarello, to end the round.
Thank you. I'm just going to carry on in that theme because I did hear from my community too that they'd like to be able to do a little bit of training before the role, before they're fully into the role. So I was just wondering, I'll ask Monsieur Quentin and then Ms. Thomas, did you have to pay for that training, or did they just come and volunteer, or is that just something that needs to be incorporated in the 8 weeks?
On l'incorpore dans les semaines de notre...
It's added in our weeks on our side. Are you talking about our training? Sorry? No. I remember that Employment Canada does give a training at the start, and that's a good thing. It's on Zoom. And it made things a lot easier for me, but I don't know if that's what you're asking, Madame Zarello.
If you needed to offer training, est-ce que vous avez besoin offre le...
Do you offer training to students? Yes. Yes. Of course, that's something else that would be great. If we could have that training. I've even tried myself to go to the offices in person, looking at the address on the documents I was receiving, but Employment Canada wasn't even there anymore. They'd moved. When I went in person, they told me, well, you can't just show up to talk to us. You need to make an appointment, and it's just not easy. But of course, that's a great idea, really, that training idea.
And Ms. Thomas, is that something that you're doing, training for your students before they start working?
Oui, on le fait.
Yes, we offer training before they start to work, but it's paid training because we can't afford to start on June 28th right away with the day camp and training. So all the training is done beforehand, but they are paid. We pay for them with the club's money.
Thank you.
Madame Zarello. Merci, Madame Thomas.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas and Mr. Quentin.
Your appearance here and obviously your passion and commitment to this program. Both of you. Merci beaucoup. With that, committee members, the committee is adjourned. Bonita.